In these times of uncertainty, it's all the more important that we keep collaborating, informing, and inspiring each other, so that we can be smarter and better tomorrow. Welcome to the Pakhuis de Zwijger livecast.
Hello everyone. On behalf of Pakhuis de Zwijger, welcome to the livecast about emerging stories. My name is Rut Kronenburg and I'm your host of today. This is already the 15th edition of Emerging Stories, the talk show where we touch upon the importance and future of independent journalism. Especially during these very crazy and sometimes uncertain times, access to reliable information is even more important than ever. In this series, we are going to dive into the different aspects of journalism. We touch upon the problems, try to come up with solutions, and we do that with international guests, with journalists, with photographers, with scientists, with entrepreneurs. They will share with us their emerging stories and the importance of journalism. And the future of journalism actually is all about innovation. So that's why we talk this week about one of those innovations, robot journalism. What does the journalistic landscape look like with artificial intelligence? I will explore this topic with 3 guests today. In the studio we have Nigel Ballard. Nigel, welcome.
Thank you.
And via Zoom we have 2 guests. First of all, Marvin Bronson from United Robots. Marvin, welcome. And we have Eve Loginova. She's Ambassador of Women in AI. Eve, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Midway, we will have an intermezzo. We are going to talk with photographer Omoregi. So that's about 30 minutes from now. First of all, let's get a proper introduction of our guests. Eve, can I start with you? What is Women in AI?
Thank you for asking this question. I've spent already 2 years on the mission explaining the beauty of our organization. Women in AI is an international non-profit global do tank. And we say do, not just think tank, because we apply and encourage action in our community members. More than 4,000 members across 115 countries, 40 actually of yesterday, ambassadors representing women in AI. And the mission is to increase the representation of women in the field of artificial intelligence, binary, non-binary, and we also work with men. So it's not purely a girls' club, it is actually something to work together to improve ethical and responsible application of technology and mitigate biases in various data sets.
Okay, thank you. And what are your main activities as an ambassador?
As an ambassador, I work with community, organize events. For example, this weekend, we started on Friday, we are organizing the first ever datathon. We call it Way Datathon for Sustainable Future. And why it's first ever? Because it's organized in virtual reality of Virbela. It is a fantastic experience. My team is handling the closing ceremony, awarding all the teams. But we usually organize a lot of events, 2 events a month easily, and plus we accelerate program for female entrepreneurs in the field of AI who are ready to start their venture. More information on womeninai.co. That's our website.
Thank you. Then I'll go to Nigel. Nigel, you're Managing Director of Radio de Banga. Can you tell us a bit about it? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, Radio de Banga it's a radio station and it's a website. It's an exiled media house. It covers news and events in Sudan, and it's been running for about 10 years. Specifically, its unique selling point is that it's a media house that elevates the stories of individuals, local people, local stories, their issues, and in that way, it's a big check on governments. It's a check on society, and it tells people what's actually going on, especially in a war-torn country like Sudan.
And it's, of course, very special nowadays with Sudan in transition, etc.
Very much so, yeah.
And you're a journalist yourself? Your background is being a journalist?
Yeah, I'm a former journalist. I've been a journalist for about 20 years now. I started off at the BBC. I've worked around the world. And then I came into kind of working with media houses in countries such as Sudan, South Sudan and South Africa, helping them develop, helping them learn to become accurate, fair and independent journalists and serve the communities where they're based.
And when did you start working for Radio de Banga?
This year I started working for de Banga. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. And how long does Radio de Banga already exist?
It's been around since about 2008. It started off just kind of covering the humanitarian crisis and the war in Darfur. And then it expanded to covering the whole of Sudan. The history of Sudan is not a happy one. For 50 years, it's been a kind of a conflict country. And Radio de Banga has always been there, spreading messages of peace, but also kind of recording the events and the atrocities and the political developments that have been going on from the perspective of its readers and its listeners.
Thank you. Marvin Bronson, welcome also. You're an investor of United Robots. What is the company about and why did you invest in it?
Actually, what we do with United Robots is that we build the technology, we build an algorithm that we collect a lot of data and then we transform it into readable text. We call it also for automated content. For example, you have a sport match being played, you collect a lot of statistics and results from the match, and after the match, within a few seconds, our technology can publish a readable news article about it.
And why did you invest in it? Because you...
Actually, it was, we met with a journalist, which is the CEO of the company. And he wrote for a lot of local newspapers. And basically what he discovered is that he got less and less resources to actually write or be able to write good quality articles, especially for the local news. So together we developed the technology with the idea to actually bring a technology that makes content available to the people, to the reader. And that's actually content that without us, nobody ever will see, because there is nowadays less and less journalists that write about certain topics.
And when was this? How long ago?
2016.
2016. And that was also when United Robots was founded?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so it's relatively new. What did you do before that?
Yeah, we have a background in a lot of media companies. Started with news, sport, and media, and we have done several projects. We've been involved in lots of startups, and after we start to invest more and more and try to add some value as investors, not only by investing money in it, but also by sharing our knowledge and using our network.
Okay. And United Robots is based in Sweden, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And do you also have assignments outside Sweden, or do you particularly work only for Swedish media?
Yeah, we started with Swedish media, and now we're available in several languages. After Sweden, we have been to Norway, now Holland. So we deliver in Dutch language, German, English, Finnish. So it's getting broader and broader, more and more languages.
So how many media actually make use of your services?
Yeah, there is now, I think in the media landscape, there is fewer players, but the players are getting bigger and bigger. And in most countries we are operating in at the moment, we work with almost all the biggest players.
You don't want to say how many in total?
No, not all media companies want to make this public. So this is a contract that we...
Just a number, it will do. Okay, thank you for sharing. In a bit, we are going to dive deeper into this subject. But first, we want to hear what the people on the street think about this. So our flying reporter actually went to the street and asked passers-by this question. more and more robots are taking over the work of journalists in writing the news and deciding which part of the news you will and will not see. So what do you think about that? Let's have a look.
Bijzonder. Het zou toch mensenwerk moeten zijn, lijkt mij. Kunnen robots dat nou beslissen?
Er wordt een selectie gemaakt natuurlijk, een robot wordt geprogrammeerd. En op basis daarvan maakt hij een selectie van wat er wel of niet getoond wordt. Dus daar schuilt er zeker ook gevaar in.
Ik denk dat dat vooral voorkomt bij sociale media. En dat doe ik toch voor het overgrote deel niet aan mee. Ik hou me gewoon liever bij de normale kranten en de pers in Nederland. Ik lees 2 kranten en dat vind ik een betere bron.
Ik vind dat het moet kunnen. Want je kan ze zelf programmeren, je kan zelf vragen wat ze moeten doen. En je kan ze besturen. Dus het is interessant.
Ja, op zich is het een ontwikkeling die we niet tegen kunnen gaan. De AI-ontwikkeling is iets wat steeds meer plaats zal vinden. Ik denk dat we eerder moeten kijken naar de scheiding tussen wat een mens nog kan doen en wat een robot kan ondersteunen. Over het algemeen gaat het over ondersteunende praktijken, als ik het nog goed heb. De technologische ontwikkeling is niet zo dat er een robot op de plek van de journalist zit. Maar in het kader van journalistiek moeten we natuurlijk waarborgen dat de vrijheid van meningsuiting, de nieuwswaarde, dat soort dingen natuurlijk niet in de knel komt. Maar voor mij hoeft het ook niet in de knel te komen. Daar zijn we met z'n allen bij. En daar kunnen we de randvoorwaarden voor scheppen, denk ik.
Ja, dan ben je het menselijke aspect een beetje kwijt natuurlijk. Dus ik weet niet of zo'n robot met de juiste vraag kan komen. Maar...
Ja, dat vind ik dus niet goed. Ik vind robots die gewoon gebruikt worden voor industriële dingen of wat dan ook. Of voor reparaties of toestanden perfect. Maar voor dat soort zaken niet.
What's your stand on this, Nigel?
I class myself as skeptical. I can kind of see the advantages, and it seems too good to be true. But I worry that it'll just be a progression of more and more automation, and I think it's something we may not be able to control.
Marvin, can you please explain to us what the definition of robot journalism is, to your point of view?
Yeah, so in my opinion, or in my belief, it's like you have a certain data set. This can be like sport news, it can be weather forecast, it can be news about traffic jams or whatever. So you collect all this data and expectations, and then behind that you have an algorithm, mostly based on artificial intelligence and machine learning, and that's the algorithm enables the data and transform it into readable content.
Actually, you brought a video of that with you, right? Shall we have a look at that?
Yes, please.
Our robot journalist uses AI to analyze games based on tons of live and historical data, including player, team, and match data, as well as numerous other data sources to form its opinion on how the game unfolds. Based on these impressions, it uses AI to form its view, choose its angles, and then using NLG, or natural language generation, it's able to write articles tailored to suit the reader. An important skill because to some, the game was a devastating loss. To others, a great win. And to some people, it was more about who scored than what the game meant. United Robots helps write the big news for the small communities, served when it matters to those it matters the most to. And of course, it's not just for football. United Robots currently serve media with AI articles on sports, weather updates, local home ownership news, product descriptions, stock market events and financial news, local business news, and much more. If there's data, we can put it in writing.
You want to comment on this, Marvin?
Yeah, so basically how we started, we try to use technology to create and publish content that would either be really easy to write about, for example, performance of the stock market, that it's basically every day it's or up or down, weather forecasts that are pretty simple. So what we try to do is that we gather the data, the results, and make it into content, just as you saw.
Right. But the question is, of course, can you call that journalism, or is that more data, automated data?
Yeah, it is automated data. It is automated content. It is not journalism as we used to see it, but that's why it's called robot journalism. So there is a technology behind that does all the work.
Yves, do you want to comment on this? Or what is your point of view?
Absolutely. Well, we are living in the age of information, and journalism generated by machine is just simply on the rise. And why we're using it, just to follow what Marvin has presented, is that we are generating a lot of information, which is data. And if I give you a number, in 2018, we have reached 18 zettabytes of information. Now, what is 18 zettabytes? And in 2025, we will achieve 175 zettabytes. What is that then? What's the difference? If you are to store 175 zettabytes on DVDs, you remember those little shiny circles with movies and music, your stack of DVDs would be long enough to circle Earth, our planet, 222 times. So this is how much of data we are to produce by 2025. Now, imagine a journalist who has to scan all those press releases and inputs and financial reports and write something. It will take forever. It's not possible. So the power of generated by machine journalism is that it saves our time. But there are a lot of things that kind of make it a little bit scary. That's another topic for discussion.
Right. We're going to talk about that later. So it can actually help the journalist. Nigel, would that be possible for Radio de Banga then, in a sense?
In a sense, I wonder how much it does save. The process is very much automated now, and individual news organisations get this kind of information from a wire service. So for them themselves, I don't think it's as much of a benefit in those terms, because it's almost semi-automated in a way. So if you're a news editor, you're taking something off the copy, you're putting it straight into your publication, or you're broadcasting it. So Radio de Banga is about real local sources. It's about people telling their stories. I don't see a way of doing that in de Banga.
But I saw, Marvin, on the website of United Robots that you actually also work with local media. So how does it operate then? So Nigel actually questioned the fact of local media, but you work a lot for and with local media, right?
Yes, it's exactly. That's basically how we got started. And we saw that in media, like local media, it was very difficult to find budget, to find resources, to get journalists and get to pay them a reasonable salary for example, 100, 200 local sport matches. And with our technology, we give the news back to the local community so they can read about their local soccer clubs, for example. Without our technology, those articles would never exist.
So Marvin claims actually that there is actually news for the audience.
Maybe I'd love to see how it works in more detail. For example, so you're saving the money on having somebody at a local game, but who's inputting that data and how do you trust that data? Yeah, a lot of journalism is based on trust and having somebody there witnessing the events who actually works for your organisation. So I wonder.
So how does United Robots deal with the trust question?
Yeah, that's a very important question. That's something that we really focus on as well. So we don't work with everybody. We don't. For us, it's also really important to get data and data sets that you actually can trust. And that's something that we are really, really strong control on. And we don't work with all data companies. So when it comes to the algorithm, when it comes to the technology, it's really dependent on what you put in. If you put in the wrong stuff, you get out the wrong articles, if you put in the right data, which is correct, which is fact-checked, which is controlled, then you have a good probability that you come to a correct article.
And how do you control that then?
Yeah, that's something that we work together with the media companies that are actually our clients. So we buy data from big and famous companies that have proven that they do a good job, yeah, that's basically how we cooperate.
So you select more independent media, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically that's it, yes.
Yves, what do you think about that? I mean, I think it's a very valid argument that Nigel stated, that you actually have to trust the media, right?
Absolutely. And me as a reader and a user of devices, various digital devices, it takes me time to figure out who to trust. Because you need to be very sure that, first of all, it's the page that you're looking at, name famous news channel, media channel, that is not a mock-up, right? But it looks exactly the same. How do I differentiate those two? You look at the address, how it's registered, what's the information. Then you look at if it's a valid website, especially social media, which is kind of a tsunami of various articles and posts, there to understand what's valid or not, because you automatically just, oh, that's nice, reshare. Oh, that's scary, let my people know. And then you don't have time sometimes to check, and you start the wave of this fake, no, not fake, but sharing automatically the news and heat up the wave without knowing the validation, without validating the resource, sorry. But you know what, the journalism that is produced by a machine has another also concern, and that would be a question to Marvin if he knows that. The confusion is about who should be credited as the author. Women in AI usually looks into the responsible ethical approach. So if you are a journalist using the machine to produce your articles, are you to put your name that you wrote the article? Do you put the software's name because that produced your inputs, or the programmer's name who defined the algorithm? So nowadays it's quite confusing also. You can trust the source, but who did write the article by the power of machine?
Yeah, that goes right. That's actually the question of the IP rights. How do you deal with that, Marvin?
Yeah, so in most of the time we actually state below the article that the article is written by a robot. It often doesn't state that it's written by us. That's something like we said before. It's often media companies don't really want to expose it too much, but it's not really a secret either. So we try to be as open and transparent about as possible, because we don't have any advantages to lie or to manipulate people in that way.
Okay, and Nigel, what would you think? Would that actually?
Because individuals are key, and from the birth of mass media in the last century, the trust element was very important, and having an individual, who's taking responsibility for what they're saying, it kind of verifies that information in a sense, and I think it worries me that there's an anonymity about this automated form of data processing. I don't like to call it journalism, because I don't think it is journalism. I think it's data processing, and it's a tool, and it's how you use that tool, and it's what the inputs into that tool are. And it worries me that there is that nobody's going to put a name behind, stand by what they're saying.
Marvin, do you want to comment on that?
Of course, it's really important to know who you can trust. But can you trust every individual? That's also a question. And we work together with media companies, and it is a partnership. There should be a win-win, and we don't feel that we have any benefits for fooling the reader. What we try to do is present facts and make it a readable story, make it a readable article. Whether we call it journalism or not, probably it's not journalism like we used to know it. But nowadays also the whole flow of data, the flow of news that we get, it's much faster, and there is much more volume that we actually read on a day-to-day basis. So I think the way we consume news is in a complete different way than we used to do for maybe 10, 20 years ago.
But does that mean that there are already complete articles written by robots? Because, I mean, I understand from the video that you brought that it actually can help journalists to generate a good story because of the analyzing of all the data. But are they already also generating complete articles in text, I mean?
Yes, that's happening already. So, and that's also something that a lot of people talk about technology, AI, machine learning as something that happens in the future, but that's actually something that's happened already today. We publish articles fully automated without any person touching it. And that's also a little bit depending on the media companies. Sometimes they prefer to edit it and have a human being still screening and correcting where it's necessary. But what we actually already do today is having fully readable content ready for publishing without touching a human being.
And is it also published?
Yes.
And can you share with us the percentage of a media per day? How much is automated by or produced by robots and by journalists?
I don't know the exact percentage, but I think it's increasing and it's going pretty fast. Before, I think also a lot of people in journalism and in media were a little bit skeptical, and then many people wondered, okay, does it actually work? Will our readers react on this in a negative way? Is the risk for us? But the technology is getting trained and getting better and better, and that's why the results, the quality of the content is improving. And we also have done tests where you, for example, ask the reader, like, okay, this article is written by a robot. Is it bad? Is it good? Do you see a big difference? And sometimes, or quite often, we have seen that actually the content or the information that you present is enough for the reader to get out what he wants to get out. If you want to read about how the stock market performed, you just want to see, okay, certain stocks went plus or minus, and then we write a story about it. So it's maybe not completely long articles, it's not in depth, but it's, for some people it's just enough.
Okay, and Yves, what do you think of this new innovation? It's already amongst us. I mean, there's no way back, I guess.
Well, I work in innovation, the field of innovation, and I started using not for journalism reasons, but I started using automated platforms that produce content. Basically, just write it for you, the same principle as robot journalism. 3 years ago, that was not really brilliant. I had to scan and fix, but it was the beginning of the whole process. Now you can write articles 300 words to 500 words, I think easily, and the logic of the sentences, the grammar is perfect. It's really hard to define whether it's written by a human being or the machine. But I would say we need to be more. It's the thing with the society, you know. It's not about writing news and mocking them and faking them. It's the thing with society. We need to be responsible about what kind of inputs we incorporate, what kind of information and the sources we use, and what kind of content we push into the world of people, because they are influenced by the media channels or the posts and social media posts. and then becomes a wave of unneeded, sometimes, behavior from people, generating some riots, generating some movement. And that's where I would stand firmly, that when we use technology, we need to think first how we build the data sets, how we put the algorithms together, and what's the end outcome we want to produce, and how we can we catch those who are using technology and writing bad articles, so we prevent their behavior in the future.
Right, very interesting. So the use of robots can actually be very interesting as an addition to journalism, but there's also a downside. We're going to talk about that later on. First, we're going to switch to another guest coming in from Nigeria, photographer Omoregi. Every week we have an international photographer to join us in the series and give us their view on the future of journalism in the form of photographs. Omoregi is a documentary photographer based in Lagos and Benin City in Nigeria. And he started photography in 2015 with the intent to tell stories of people, places and events that are not accurately or adequately portrayed in the mainstream media. Omoregi, very warm welcome. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. It's good to be here.
Right. Just before we started the live cast, you shared with us that COVID-19 has disappeared from the front page, and and all the attention is now on the fact that the special forces with the abbreviation SARS are banned by the government, and that people in the streets are demonstrating, right?
Yeah, yes.
Can you share just a little bit about that? Why is it so important?
Yeah, it is quite important. To start with, I'm actually wearing black today to mourn those that have been killed by the special police unit called SARS, which stands for Special Anti-Robbery Squad. It was actually formed to combat armed robberies in Nigeria, but over the years, the particular unit has been known for harassing youth and have killed so many youth by just looking good and using an iPhone. When they feel that you're well dressed, they feel you're a criminal. You are, So last week, for the first time in a very long time, we started a protest across Nigeria. Protesting against this unit. We wanted it banned, and just yesterday, the Inspector General of Police actually announced the ban of this unit. And this just a few minutes ago, the president reiterated what the IG of police said. But then the protest has continued because there's so much mistrust between Nigerians and politicians. We know because this is the fourth time in 4 years that the president would be putting an end to the unit, and we end up seeing them on the street. As I'm talking to you right now, yesterday, where the IG was announcing on national TV that the unit has been banned, some protesters were being maltreated at the same time. Because we felt that it is not just enough to ban them, because what the government has actually done is they did not actually bring any of them out for prosecution. All those that have actually killed people in the past, harassed people in the past, none has been prosecuted, none has been brought to justice. So we are saying that we don't just want an end to the units right now. We want to see those of them that have killed before in the past, that have harassed people in the past, that have raped women in the past, that have abused people, innocent people, citizens in the past. We want to see them. And of course, reform Nigerian police in total, provide them, take care of their family members, increase their salaries, and have a total overhauling of the Nigerian police force. So the protest has actually continued, and when this is over, I will join them on the streets.
Yeah, great. Despite this, going on in Nigeria, you still had a chance to shot some photos, some pictures for us. You gave it the title Going Forward, right? Can you? So we're going to have a look at them. And can you share with us what the picture is about and why you actually took it?
Oh, okay. Yeah. During the lockdown, when the pandemic started in Lagos, and the Nigerian government took a cue from other leaders of the world and declared a lockdown, there was one thing that was actually in my mind. As I was working, I was working somewhere outside of Lagos. I had to come back because Lagos was going to have a total lockdown. So I had to come back, and all through the lockdown, one thing was in my mind: because we're not getting any jobs and we couldn't move, couldn't do anything. One thing was in my mind: how is it going to be after now? What is it going to be? What's the fate of me as a freelance journalist that is not employed by any media house? How would work continue? How am I going to sustain this profession? And I had discussions with other colleagues like myself too, and the same thing was actually on their lips too. Like, it was the same thing that they had in mind. So for this project, it actually created this project with just 2 questions. I decided to not just to find out, to think about ways that would actually sustain our profession, our practice as Africans and as freelance journalists who are Africans too. How do we intend to continue producing works, And I decided to since I don't have all the answers alone, I decided to interview and photograph some of my colleagues that I know who are freelance like me, to actually see their opinion and to actually hear their opinions and see if what they think would actually sustain this profession. So I asked basically just 2 questions.
Shall we have a look?
Yeah.
And can you please share with us who this is, what the picture is about?
Yeah, I will. So I basically asked them 2 questions. How did you survive the lockdown as a freelance journalist?
Right.
And what do you think are the innovative ways that would sustain this profession as a Nigerian, as an African, as a freelance journalist working and living in Nigeria? So this is my friend Kamede Chukwu. She's a photographer and a writer, a freelance journalist, and then during the lockdown, she did a very interesting project. If you go to the first picture, please. Now, she did a body of work during the lockdown using a phone. It was she made a series of portraits in a story called Virtual Reality. Where she was able to interview, photograph and interview some of our friends and family members and people that were actually locked down. Using technology, using FaceTime and WhatsApp. I found out quite very. This is just a photograph from that very series, series of them, and it was quite an interesting project for me.
Yes.
Not being, despite being locked down, but not being handicapped by the lockdown. You're still going ahead to create a story.
And so, what about this picture?
So this is Obayomi Anthony. Obayomi is a freelance journalist too. So when I interviewed him, he talked about how he felt that going forward, one of the things we should actually look at while working on stories as freelance journalists is actually making.
We need to speed up a bit, Omoregi. Sorry, we need to speed up a bit. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah, it's okay. So for this, he's talked about how we need to use more of archival materials, verified archival materials. Since our work is actually research-based, we can actually make use of more of archival materials. Since, of course, there will be much restrictions. We don't know what the future really holds in terms of movement and all that. So we can actually make use of archival materials. This was one point that I took from him, while I interviewed him.
Great.
This is Eboluwa. She talked more about how technology has been able to actually help her improve herself as a freelance journalist during the lockdown. She had scholarships and many programs that she couldn't have been able to achieve and go to these places and actually attend. She was able to get all the scholarships and attend them via Zooms, and she has improved herself through technology as a freelance journalist. Very nice. This is Oris. Oris is a freelance writer in Lagos. He's a film critic too. So on the side, but he's majorly a freelance writer. For him, when I talked to him, he actually shared there's something profound. He said this is the time for African freelance journalists to actually create some sort of their own sort of platforms that they can actually tell their own stories without waiting for editors abroad to actually, where they can actually share their own stories, to create their own platform that could actually monetize using available technology like, of course, the internet, create their own videos and put it out there, and actually use social media to create the kind of audience and still push out their stories. So even while waiting for commission jobs, they can actually have another source of income while still sustaining their profession as freelance journalists.
Wow. So thank you so much for sharing these pictures with us. I wish you all the best. You're going to the demonstration or to the streets right now. I wish you all the best. Take care of yourself, and maybe until next time. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right.
Bye. So let's go back to our topic of the day, robot journalism, and can it actually benefit journalism? So we talked before the intermezzo about how it can help journalists, but there's also a downside, of course. And Eve, you brought something with us to share, and you're afraid of the downside of AI, right?
Absolutely. There are scary things, like Netflix shows you Black Mirror explaining how the future could be a little bit more tweaked than we expect it to be. Same with the robot journalism. There's a term, fake news, and also you can call it fake articles, which produce fake news, and then you have tsunami. So on the picture I brought with me today, you will see President Trump, who is known nowadays for saying everything is fake news here, fake news there. Depends. Is it a term that is used by him to kind of say, I have nothing to do with that, it's all not real, or it's actual news that covers his days, what he does? We're not to dive into that situation, but fake news is an actual term. And on that picture, I showed that there is already a game that you can purchase called Fake News, that you can really test yourself whether you know if it's real news or not. But I will leave it for you to go through that at your own time and figure it out. Fake news, the risk with that is that AI algorithm produces the content, and the content itself affects the citizens. There are countries, and if I may have the picture with the countries affected the most with the number of fake news. So if you see your country on the list, the winners, let's call it that, Turkey, Mexico, Brazil, United States, South Korea. So the top 5 countries and others underneath who are suffering. The people are suffering from the huge amount of fake news. And then if we look into the understanding what is that fake, how is it produced? Is it the same platform of robot journalism kind of software platform that generates my news, or something else? So let me show you a video that explains the difference, because human eye cannot spot the difference between fake and not if you watch a video or read an article. But technology, AI, can. AI produces something that is not right and real, fake, and AI can detect it. So let's watch a video that explains how it's all done.
Some of these videos are real and some are fake. What do you think? Which is which? Well, here are the results. This one contains artifacts and is hence easy to spot, but the rest, it's tough. And it's getting tougher by the day. How many did you get right? Make sure to leave a comment below. However, don't despair, it's not all doom and gloom. Approximately a year ago, in came face forensics a paper that contains a large dataset of original and manipulated video pairs. As this offered a ton of training data for real and forged videos, it became possible to train a deepfake detector. You can see it here in action as these green to red colors showcase regions that the AI correctly thinks were tampered with. However, this follow-up paper by the name Face Forensics++ contains not only an improved dataset, but provides many more valuable insights to help us detect these deepfake videos and even more. Let's dive in. Key insight number 1. As you've seen a minute ago, many of these deepfakes introduce imperfections, artifacts to the video. However, most videos that we watch on the internet are compressed, and the compression procedure, you have guessed right, also introduces artifacts to the video. From this, it follows that hiding these deepfake artifacts behind compressed videos sounds like a good strategy to fool humans and detector neural networks likewise, and not only that, but the paper also shows us by how much exactly. Here you see a table where each row shows the detection accuracy of previous techniques and a new proposed one, and the most interesting part is how this accuracy drops when we go from HQ to LQ, or in other words, from a high quality video.
Yeah, and the video continues, but actually the most importantly we already saw, huh?
Yes, I would like to recommend to learn more about that, but to summarize, so deepfake is a portmanteau of deep learning and fake, which is a synthetic media, right? In which a person in existing image or video is replaced by someone else's likeness. Let's show another example. That's a person who is producing an image of Mr. Putin, President Putin. And you see what is done with the power of software and algorithm. A man on the right is just moving his lips, camera is facing him. And then in the computer, you will see a famous person, politician, who pretty much repeats after the person who is using the web camera. And that's where it becomes very, very dangerous, because the beauty of robot journalism is to save time, to encourage more investigation by journalists, to go on missions, to discover facts, write really great articles with the power of facts produced and collected by the machines. But when you start writing and incorporating all of these deepfakes, that's when it becomes really untrustworthy, and we should be all concerned about it.
Yeah. Do you agree, Nigel?
Yeah. It's the climate we've got for independent journalism and how this tool is used. So, for example, Marvin talks about it freeing up journalists in local organisations to do more investigative reports. But the theory is, I think that just means more opportunities for budget savings. I think there's always going to be budgetary pressures on local news. And then we talk about the speed of this and being first and being there with the news is always a big thing for many media organisations across the world. And I think in a competitive media market where there is little room for independent journalism to thrive and to continue and to grow, I think we're fooling ourselves if we think that this technology will solve it. In the wrong hands, it's a danger.
Yeah, it's a danger. Do you agree, Marvin? Or is there also a way that AI can actually combat this?
Yes, I definitely agree. I think we should be really, really careful with the downsides. And I'm not really specialized in technologies how to combat that, but I think it definitely should be possible to find technology that can actually detect this kind of manipulation in a way. So I think it's also it emphasized that we should be really, really careful which news source to trust and how we read the news, of course.
And is that something that United Robots is looking for or will invest in to combat this negative or the downside of AI?
No, actually, we're always looking at it, and what we try to do is to be like a trustworthy, collaborative partner. we don't really write about news in a way that it's, for example, political. So for most of the time, it's still like fact-based, statistics-based, thinking about sports, temperature, the weather forecast, traffic jams and stuff like that. So that's pretty easy to detect and to
innocent subjects or innocent topics, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Pretty standardized, yes.
Mm-hmm. But do you think there is also a way that United Robots can actually help programming software to combat the negative and the downside of AI?
Yeah, that's a possibility. It's not really something that we are focused on right now, but I really foresee for the future that there are really solutions needed to combat this kind of fraud or manipulation in a way, definitely.
Nigel, after hearing all this, are you going to try to use it in Radio de Banga?
Yeah, if I could afford it, and Marvin needs to give me a price breakdown, it could help. Yeah, it could help in many ways because budgets were always under pressure and there's always budget limitations. So I can see the advantages of it. I worry for it outside Radio de Banga. I worry for it when other people start using it and then start competing with Radio de Banga. So I think it's a mixed message.
Yeah.
I think it gives.
Talking about that, is it expensive, Marvin, to use it as a media house?
No, it's what is expensive? It's always a hard question. It's
Does it replace a journalist on an annual basis?
Yeah, I think especially I think that the speed and volume, this is something that we're really focusing on. I think the other way, how I would like to see it, instead of replacing the journalist, is that we develop technology where we complement the journalist. There are always certain things that technology can do, and for the moment cannot do. And for example, if we take a journalist, I have a lot of respect for journalists. I think it's a pure craft. And if I read a good article, I can be really jealous because I'm not able to write it well myself. But for example, if we think about creativity, if we think about connecting certain things, to think deeper, to make connections, it's a lot of things that actually technology cannot do yet, I would say. And that's why we really need the journalists. So that's why I would really like to see our technology as a complement for the work of the journalist. But
not replacing the journalist, you mean? Not replacing the journalist.
Yeah, exactly. That for me would be the best case, yes.
The best outcome of this. Yeah. Okay, well, that is actually good news, isn't it, Nigel?
Yeah, yeah.
Now you trust it a bit more.
I can see it's a great tool, yeah. And Eve talked about the amount of data we get, and at de Banga, this is an issue with this, the amount of information we get through.
Right.
So yeah, I, as a tool, but not to replace any journalists.
No. So actually, we can all agree on that. Eve, you too, right?
Absolutely. Technology and humanity should always walk together side by side, but not to take over the position of each other.
No. So we can actually conclude that together. So before we're going to round up, I have a last question for all three of you. I ask this to all my guests, so also to you. And the question is, what does the media landscape look like in 2050? So 30 years from now. And Eve, can I start with you?
Sure. That's a very good question, because with the power of tech, then you would see a lot of merger acquisitions trying to survive. Those who won't apply technological tools, platforms like Marvin's, would probably be forced to leave the field. Those who implement and continue applying technology would win the game. So I would say there will be probably a lot of channels for people to become journalists, like individuals, like me sitting at home right now. I can become a journalist with the power of technology. But at the same time, I'm hoping the future is very, very peaceful, where we can write articles and not run wars. That's my only concern.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Nigel? What is your vision on the media landscape?
Mine is more of a hope, I think. I think there will be less news and more quality news. Yeah, I think we will learn lessons from the last 5 years and the next 10 years, and we will have developed a way of managing the amount of data we now have to process. So whether it is community journalism or single source journalism or whatever, there will be less of it and better quality.
Nice. Marvin, can I ask the same question to you?
Yes, I will be a little bit diplomatic here, but I really hope for a good balance, a good combination. I think still nothing beats a good story. So I hope that we still can get value from creativity from the journalist. But I think as a complement to that, for like statistic-based or quick news, that technology will progress. And I think also that nowadays voice and audio will dominate more and more. So that's something that we probably will see more as well in 2050, even though it feels really far from now.
Yeah, it's 30 years from now. But up till now, everyone actually sees a future for journalism and independent journalism. So that is good news, in fact, right? Thank you very, very, very much for joining us today. We need to round up. This was the 15th edition of Emerging Stories, the talk show about the importance and future of journalism. Next week, we will be back with a new episode, and then we are going to talk about the influence of news and fake news on the public debate. So again, we're going to talk about fake news. I want to thank Marvin, Yves, Nigel. Thank you very much. And of course, also Omo Reggie. Every day, Pakhuis de Zwijger has livecast around all different kind of topics. Check out the website for their program. And I'll see you next week. Have a nice evening. Goodbye.